Sikole ngambulo luku. With whatever we do. Jioni safu no la. With whatever we do. Hale yide munyu skula. Nyepamne ne kudlukula. Nyepangira galagena. Nyepamne ne kudlukula. Ibuloke nongoto ni beti sola. Ibuloke dato ni betoto.
Bigi Congo.
Lamin. Ini ke jibe norin te nyamen Lamin.
Kabana wulo.
Wulo ko na nyinta mo Lamin.
Pabilenki.
Muna ngata afamole.
Haina.
Ngata. Ngoto le. Fabrama.
Mingi. Baba nyola.
Ngoto le Fabrama.
Namu jumara kan kuma diten.
Fabrama.
Jumara mu.
Ndele bare muso.
Nunda mana. Jamani mbere.
Lindo ko.
Jamani.
Bari ngoto mon kontande.
Bari jamani bana na mundu wa kontan.
Ngoto minaka ngala min de fon filitala. Lamin jibe nori nyaala.
Lamin ila siran sama ne benki. Yala so dol sayni no ko mo lakko momo.
Ngoto.
Nam.
Iterinte yalo ne Lamin hakkilo diata bake karambu ngoto. Anu sante ko di ngole si suko na amake ko do holi
si bitun
ala ni ko kede namo balo
ala ni na ko na karta bulo be dam ala ni je
ngoto
nam
ngoto mon kontan fere
jamani mu ne keda
ite ka Lamin ki wulo ko no nyinta mon ko do fete malo Lamin nyanta sila la be la moy kala karango
jamani karamu be soron ne ko fa ko
Baba
karambu wol ma ni ko karambu wol soron da amake ko holiday lem ngoto di ni nyanta sila la ala karango la moy yamen kamen fue man kontan anda mande
alla nyin kombo courant adanda alla kombo ndo la jankara mol soron do kamen courant ma daro la kombo e don do fanena kara mol soron je kara mol soron Lamin adara lo nyino la man tara fe na sokon ala mu nekela
Lamin ite fede malo ko le sinol de ke kar radio to
nga fine
e ko nyina di mo Lamin
nga fine
ye mu na fonye
tabim mina kan tambita nteri maning Fatu
ha
tambite la sukol ala dinol bebe siri be la moyka
faru dan so am fana tambira jele ni subala e ngaje dinol be jet talanta nen kili waro e be serin jelet
sa Lamin farante ku kili ko ke no la ba Lamin bita ka wulo ko no nyinta mo alami
amandara fenela
ite dina ko ni man siri kari la sinol la moy radio to e balon na
mu ne ka ke afende ma nyaara ni alon
talentel jiko
afende ma mu ne be ke
ite balon tel be cikiritel ni man kara yaje nata kara namba sambala ya itarije
par ñarande kombo courant ho findira kombo ide nara yede ni sonka bay ko Lamin ma ñata la wulo faru karam mo be so da fa ñambe
ko to wole nati bawo ngalle ni Lamin kuntala kombo courant o ka fa me kombo courant asototal wala kinay ko e sisu kono bari ni ko e sisu kono be karangol dike la radio lin telel to hani tele masoto to nyaa man tele soto la bongo bar radio be bulan koto batiri sanga ay si ay alama
sa do kala
nyaadi ko ta ho bulaji
ado kala nyaadi
kamun ke nyaadi
radio abo la mo la be mona falaje
ibe la karandirol kala jele
ti talle be radio ko men ka karam
ile subject ro baby jele baby jele
wala nanga coco moy fa dan so wala ngomme tambi kana ngadi ngol jebe ikadum bu ngol be kala
ma asototal de
Lamin mala be kara wala de
bari laftalal ideal on ko inde every year second wala fourth
mune ni ko di ko nde ko folle simila ba ndele similo ne ba
mba say mba foke en koto wole fango yen wulindi yalo famo keta bat yu fana bulata kol ko me yen nati jambi Lamin nyanta karana ntel be jiko be nyineka ya bulay kara wulo kana ta kilar ya bambalo yo be bulaje koto dindi ngoy si ayala le sino la moy radio
wala ka munda kara mo man soro Lamin nyana kara si so na be
la sino le ayala le sino
dal ko korno ko smolo
kilar ya
be bin ko mo say mi do ni ko kara
nengi bruzo
am ne ko ro la ba ro sa no re ba no ba ri woro re ni abe je le ba ngamra do man be buljan dala nyara ni aro ko fendi mo la Lamin tayra ba ro sa
bara te ku folo ajibe nori nya labi tamete
mingi mun na de
teku
bari ko do famo ke
nambol si zol ne keje kisigi man si zol no le kabun ka nyoma bari nyambu kilo ni manya na kafindi ni nambe ko zol la ga
ngalle limbeta de be nyambo do dilanna
nyara ni ko rin fennat nyara nata
bari famo ke da
nata bungono tammi bungono nyara ngando ko mele ko ke de bar ngam ni pelo la dija
iyo awata
bungono bismillah bisu diara
pendulala yefungo tanka sina dulu tanka korota korota
viewers and listeners. My name is Sirif Ba, accounting. If you look at the question 4, they say write up the following transaction in a ledger account of Mrs. Fatmata Jah for the month of April 2010. Balance of an extract a trial balance. So here you will see that in this ledger, in this question, we are asked to open the ledger accounts, the ledger accounts, and balance them up. Now, we have Mrs. Jah, Mrs. Fatmata Jah, and we are asked to take this question so that we can open the ledger. After preparing the ledger accounts, then therefore we balance of the account. Finally, after balancing of the accounts, then we prepare or extract what we call the trial balance. Now, the first thing we need to do is the same thing. We have to apply these 3 steps. First, identify the accounts involved. The accounts involved in a given transaction. The second one, identify the receiving and the giving. Then the third one is, after identifying the giving and the receiving, we apply the golden rule. We debit the receiver, and the fourth one, the third one is the same. Then we credit the giver. So we are going to identify the first one. Let's apply these 3 fundamental steps. It will help us to solve every question on a double entry. Now, let me give an example. I'm going to write these things. We're going to follow this in order to solve our question. So now, the first transaction we have is April 1st. We write the date. So the accounts that are involved are started business with 25,000 cash and 30,000 bank. So here we have 3 accounts there. Started business, we have capital. The other one, we have cash, bank. Then the other one, we have cash, bank. Then we have cash. So this is bank account. This is credit, currency, naira. We have, here is April, here is 2010. We have the currency naira, then we have what we call the naira also, currency. Then we have 2010. We have capital account. We have cash account. Now, we have already opened our 3 accounts. We have the capital account. That is why we have started business. Started with 25,000 cash, that is cash in hand, and then 30,000 into the bank. So now if you look at it here, we have about 3 accounts on the board, but that doesn't mean that we are going to record 3 times of no. We are going to make sure that the total, the principal that we said, one of the features, the total that will be exchange equal amount. They exchange equal amount. The amount that you record on the debit must be equal to the amount that is on the credit. And we all know that when we are starting business, capital is always credited. We're giving it out. Bank is receiving 30,000 and the 25,000. So if I add, my total debit must be equals to my total credit. Now, what we do here is that the accounts that are involved are here. That's step number 1. So the second step, we identify the giving and the receiving. So according to the question, the capital is the giving and the cash and the bank will be the receiving. So after when we know step 2, what do? We move on to step 3. And what is step 3? We apply the golden rule. We debit the receiver and credit the giver. So now let's apply step 3, because we already know that capital is the giving and bank and cash is the receiving. So let's apply that. You can start with any. You can start with this one. You can start with cash. You can start with capital. There is no problem. What is important that is any amount you record on the debit must be the same amount that you will record on the credit side. Now let's start. So first of all, we have the year on top, that is 2010. It's better to write the year, avoiding one. You can write it there too. That's not a problem. Remember, there are features of a ledger. One is the date, the second one is the narration, and the last one will be the value or the amount. Now, what do we have? We have 25,000. So that's 25,000 was in cash. So we come here, we write the date, 1st April 2010, 1st April. So we have April, then we have what we call less than a cash. We have cash. The amount that we have there is 25,000. So now 25,000 is the amount that the capital is given to cash. So for every credit entry, there must be entry. So capital is given cash. So don't think that we are crediting cash. So kind of problem. We are not crediting cash. This is just telling us what actually happened. I am starting my business when 1st April 2010 with what? So the narration will tell you. So the amount will tell you, narration will tell you I'm starting with cash. So how much is involved? The amount will tell you. So don't think that we are, because the law says you always contain entry's name in the narration. So now we move on to the cash. We have the same date, 1st April, then we have 1st April. What do we have? We don't also write cash. We cannot have cash as the account and you write here cash too. So the narration will be capital, and the amount is 25,000. So let's move on to the next one. So we have what we call the bank, the same date, 1st April, we have bank. The amount is 30,000. And then for bank also, the capital is credited, and then the bank will be debited with the same amount. 1st April, we have what we call capital. So the amount will be 30,000. So the next item we have on the transaction will be 2nd April, bought goods on credit from far to south. That's F south, 3,800. So the two accounts involved, because it's bought, we need to start with the first principle. That's identify the accounts first. I told you if the accounts that we identify is wrong, obviously our other steps will be wrong, because the most important aspect is the title. The title must be correct so that we can able number 2 and step number 3. So here the two accounts, bought good, purchases is involved, and we don't have purchases here. It means we need to open purchases account. Purchases account must exist. Then we have credit, currency 2010, Naira 2010. That's the debit. The other transaction that exists is the account that exists is far to sow, that's F. Account we have the right side is the credit. We have the currency, Naira. Then the year is 2010. Currency, Naira. We have debit on the left side. Then we have 2010. So we identify step number 1. Step number 2 is we identify the giving and the receiving account. So the giving account here is because they say bought from Fatuso. So Fatuso is given, is the giving account. Fatu is the giving account. Then obviously if Fatuso is the giving account, then purchasing will be the receiving account. And the last step said, the moment we identify the giving and the receiving, they say debit the receiver and credit the giver. So that's the last step. So what do? We come to the receiver on the left side of the receiver. And this one is the giver, we go to the right side. So this is the left side. We first of all start with the date because the date will tell us what actually, when the transaction occur. The narration will tell us what actually happened, and the amount will tell us how much was. These are the 3 main important things we need to consider. So the first one is that's the date, the 2nd April, and then we are buying. So the narration tell you what happened. Buying from who? Then we write so. How much was involved? We look at the question, 3,800. So we have entered the debit entry. So now the next one is, because the one cannot be on the left and the one will be on the left and the other one will be on the right. That's why if you arrange it like this, you will not get confused because we don't have 2 debits, we don't have 2 credits. On the left and the other will be on the credit. So if you know one, you will be able to know which one is going. So now Fatuso is given, so Fatuso will be credited according to the tax principle. So we come here the same date, 2nd April, then we have what we call Fatuso, what? Purchases. And how much was involved? 3,800. 3,800. Now, the third transaction is paid rent in cash, 250 and 300 Naira by check. So the 3 accounts that are involved there, one, we have rent account, and the other one we have cash, and the other one we have bank. Check is always represented by bank, so cash. So one thing that you need to is, you don't open an account more than once. We have, you look at, go to your accounts and see, we have capital there, we have bank, we have cash. We also have your cash and bank. So you don't need to open cash and bank again. No, it is only open once. You don't need to open it again. So what do? Is the account that doesn't exist among this account is the rent. So you only need to open rent account. You only need to open rent account. Rent account. So the right side will be credit, the left side will be debit, then we have the year 2010, then we have the currency, that's Naira, we have the currency Naira, the year is 2010. So they say paid rent. We are paying rent using 2 formats. We are paying rent using cash, we are paying rent using what we call bank. So therefore, what we are paying is what is receiving. So the rent is receiving cash, and as we're receiving what we call the check. So what do? According to step 2, we need to identify the giving and the receiving. And here, according to the question, rent is the receiving. And if rent is the receiving, so both cash and bank will be given. So what do? We go to the last step. After identifying the giving and the receiving, the last step will be we debit the receiver and credit the giver. Now let's do that. We are going to debit the receiver by looking at the date we have on the 3rd April. We have cash, and then the same date we have bank. So cash is 250 and bank is 300. So let's do accounts now. We have bank. Bank is paying to rent the same date. Then we write rent, which is 300. Then we look at for that of cars, the same date. We write rent. Rent, and the amount is 250. You see, if I add this plus this, is equal to the total we have on the debit side. Let's go to the next transaction. On the 7th, car sales. Car sales. When they say car sales, there are two accounts that are involved: sales account and cash account. We don't have sales account, but we have cash account. So we are only going to open sales account, and there will be no cash account again. So we have sales account, sales account. So sales is always credited. We don't need to bother ourselves. Sales is always credited. So what do? We are going to credit sales with the amount, the 2010. We have Naira. So we are going to credit sales with the amount. So what is the amount? We have 7th April. Car sales, we have cars, and the amount we have there is 6,500. So what is the next one? We go to cars. Cars is coming in. So cars is here. We write the same date, that's 7th April. What do we have? Sales, 6,500. So now let's move on to the next item. The next item we have sold goods and received check. This is called also a cash transaction, because what happens after selling our goods, we receive check immediately after selling our goods. So the two accounts involved there is sales and bank, but we don't need to open the accounts because they already existed. So we have sales account is there. We also have bank account. So what we need to do, we go to step 2, which says that we identify the receiving account and the giving account. And according to the question, sales is always credited, so is the giving account always, and check is coming in, so obviously check will be the receiving. So after identifying the giving and the receiving, then we move to the last step, that which is that we have to debit the receiver and credit what we call. So which one is the receiver here? Sales is the giver because it's the one that is given. Then therefore the receiver will be the bank. So the bank will be debited with the amount. Let's look at the date first. We have on the 8th April, we have bank. No, we don't have bank with bank. You see, students make this mistake. So we don't have bank with bank. Bank is receiving from the sales. So the narration will tell us what actually happened. We are receiving bank from where? From the sales. So if I come to the sales, I don't also write sales. I will say, okay, I am taking my money where? Then the narration will tell you. So here, we don't write bank with bank. We are receiving money from where? So the narration will tell us, from our sales. How much? Then how much is involved? Is 6,980. So you see, narration, date, narration, and the value. So we come to the sales. We are given. The date is the same on the 8th April. And on the 8th April, we are having what we call bank. And the amount involved is 6,980. So the second to last item will be paid F. So the amount due to him, the amount due to her by check. Supposed to be an amount due to her by check. So now, the amount due to her, they do not indicate the amount there, but you should know that we bought from Fatso. How much did we buy from Fatso? We bought 3,500 from Fatso. So we did not pay Fatso. So what they are trying to tell us here is that we are paying Fatso the amount due. So in this case, we need to go back to the previous transaction and they will tell us what actually happened. So according to the second transaction, that is 2nd April, they are telling us bought goods on credit from Fatso. So we were buying on credit. So therefore, we did not pay. So we want to pay Fatso the amount due. It means the outstanding balance. So if you want to know the outstanding balance, it depending on how much was given to us by Fatso. So according to the transaction on April 2, 2nd April, they said Fatso gave us 3,800. So therefore, this 3,800 is the amount due. So we are paying FATSO. So FATSO is receiving and the bank is giving. So FATSO is already there, and then the bank also is already there. Open any account for FATSO and any account for bank. So FATSO is receiving the payment, and according to the last the receiver, and obviously if you debit FATSO, the bank will be credited automatically. So now we have the date will be on the 9th April. We have bank, and the amount due is 3,800. So we go to the bank, we are paying FATSO, that's on the 9th. FSO, the amount is 3,800. Last item is pay wages and salaries in cash, 400, and by check, 375. Wages and salaries in the accounts we have on the board, so we only need to open wages and salaries, but the cash is already there. So we open wages and salaries account, wages and salaries account. We have so paid wages and salaries in cash 400 and by check 375. So we are paying wages and salaries. Wages and salaries is receiving because we are paying it using cash and bank. So the bank is going and then the cash is also going. So now what happened is, according to the steps we have, the giving is always going to be and the receiving will be debited. Now the giving will be the bank and that of the cash. So what do? We just need to come here. We credit the bank, credit the cash, and finally the wages and salaries will be debited. So what do we have? We have pay wages and salaries. We have on the 10th, we have wages and salaries. And here also, we have on the 10th, wages and salaries. What do we have? Wages and salaries. The amount for cash is 400, and the amount for bank is 375. So we come to the wages and salaries, we debit. We have on the 10th April, we have bank, 10th April, we have cash. So cash is 400, bank is 375. Is the end of the opening transactions, whereby we have to open the ledger. So we are moving on to the last step, where we just have to balance this quickly and extract our small trial balance here. And that will be the end of the question. So we have the debit. Trial. Now, let's start with the first one. If you are balancing, the first thing is we need to compare the debit with the credit. We write our columns. So we need to add. All of them has to be the same, like this. Quickly. Balancing this, you can start with anyone to balance this. It doesn't matter because you have to balance all. So it doesn't matter which one you start with. But let's start with this one quickly. So we just add, the total amount is what comes to the column. So 5,000 plus, that is about 55,000. We write 55,000 here. We also 1,000 here. So we need to compare the debit with the credit. So we credit, we have 55,000, but the debit, we don't have any amount there. So it's just like when you say 55,000 minus 0, it gives you the same 55,000. The difference between the debit and the credit side represent the balance carried down. That's the balance at the end. So 30th April, we have 2010. We have balance carried down 55,000. So for every carried down, there must be corresponding brought down. The ending of the beginning of May, that's 1st May, balance brought down the same amount, 55,000. So let's move on to the next. We need to add the debit side and the credit side. So if you add the debit side here, it will going to give us 36,980. 36,980. So the difference will represent the balance carried down. And for every carried down, that will be brought down. 1st May balance brought down. So let me calculate this. So we have 3,800 plus 300 plus 375. That's we have 4,475 minus 36,980. So the difference will serve as 32,505. 32,505. So let's move on to the next one. The cash account. We do the same thing. We look at which side is greater. According to the figures we have, we know that the debit side is more than the credit side. 1,000 plus this will going to give us 25,000 plus 6,500. That's 31,500. 31,500. The difference will serve as balance carried down. Balance carried down minus 650. So we have 30,000. 30,850. Balance brought down. 1st May. 30,850. So this one item 3,800. So the difference will serve as carried down. Balance carried down. The same amount, 3,800. So for every carried down, there must be corresponding brought down. 1st May, balance brought 3,800. So the next one we have is, now, far to solve, this is what we call, far to solve, the total debit is equal to total credit. So therefore, we don't have carried down, brought down, it's self balance, 3,800, 3,800. No carried down, no brought down. So rent, we have two items on the debit. 250 plus is going to give us 550. We have 550. So the difference between the debit and the credit will represent balance carried down. We have balance carried down, and that is going to give 550. So for every carried down, there must be corresponding brought down. We have 1st May balance brought down, the same amount, 550. So now, the other item we have here, the credit side is more than, is 6,500 plus 6,000. The total we have is 13,480. 13,480. Nothing is on the debit side, so the difference 1st balance carry down 13 brought down, first me balance brought down 13,480. So the final one is the wages and salaries. 400 plus 375, that's 775. So the difference we have is going to be the 31st April balance carry down 775. 1st May balance brought down 775. Now finally is just to extract this now, to take these balances and take it to the trial balance directly. So that one is very easy. We are just taking the balance from the ledger and put it into the trial balance. So there are two ways. If you want, you look at the carry down. If you want, you look at the brought down. But that one is very easy. We just transfer this and take it to the trial balance. Only the balance transfer. So now we look at the accounts that existed. For instance, we have capital. You don't need to write account. So capital. So if you want to know where to record capital in the trial balance, it's easy. You just look at the brought down. For me, I look at the brought down aspect. If the brought down is credit, you credit in the trial balance. If you are looking at in the carry down side, if the carry down is debit, you do the opposite. If carry down is debit, you credit it in the trial balance. But just let's look at the brought down. Brought down for capital is credit. We are going to credit it in the trial balance. Just come here and write 55,000. So the next account we have quickly. So bank, we look at the brought down for bank. Bank, the brought down is on the debit. So you just look at the brought down. If the brought down is on the debit, you are going to debit it balance. So we have 32,505. That's on the credit. So we look at cash. Cash also, the brought down is on the debit. So if the brought down is on the debit, you're going to debit it in the trial balance. So cash, the brought down is 30,850. 30,850. That's on the credit. So we move on to the next account, purchases. Purchases also, we look at the brought down. If the brought down is on the debit, we're going to debit it. So we have purchases 3,800. That's. So we move on to the next one. Farso is a self-balance account. You see, we are transferring the brought down or the carry down. You see, Farso did not have brought down, did not have carry down. So this one, it's not going to be taken to the trial balance. So let's move on to the next one. Rent. Rent has carry down, it has brought down. So it is qualified to be taken there. And we look at the brought down. The brought down is on the debit, so we are going to debit it. So we have rent. The brought down is a debit. As we look at the amount, 550. That's on the credit side. So after rent, we have sales. Sales also, we look at the brought down. Forget about the carry down, look at the brought down. The brought down is on the credit side. So if you are transferring it into the trial balance, you transfer it by putting it on the credit side. So we have sales. Then we take it to the credit, 13,480. So after sales, the last one is wages and salaries. Wages and salaries also, we look at the brought down, and the brought down is on the debit side. So we are going to debit it. Salaries. So debit is going to be 775. And that is the end of the extraction. So the last one we need to add to see whether the debit side of the trial balance, or whether, because the trial balance tests the arithmetic accuracy of the double entry principle. So if you want to know whether our principles are correct, we need to know, we have to balance the trial balance. But if we refuse to balance, then therefore we know that, because there are some errors that will. So we need to add the total debit and the total credit to confirm whether our double entry is correct. So let's start with the credit side. 55,000 plus 13,480, and that's going to give us 68,480. Now let's come to this one. We have 32,505 plus 30,850 plus 3,800 plus 550 plus 775. So our answer is the same, 68,480. Our entry double entry system is correct because as attest to it, then therefore that is the end of this lesson. Until we meet again. Thank you.